Let's get one thing straight at the top here. Making video games is hard, and sadly for some, they don't always turn out the way that they originally expected, some more so than others. YouTube what's good, See You Later Gaming here, bring you a brand new episode of Top 5. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at some of the worst releases for the year that was 2023.
Who the hell needs your junk?
Coming in at number 5 to start us off, Forspoken. 2023 has been a great year for some fantasy video games, including the now Game of the Year, Baldur's Gate 3. Sadly, Forspoken wasn't one of them. On paper, this game had all the makings of a well-rounded AAA title, namely because of the pedigree of individuals working on it, which included industry heavyweights in Amy Hennig, Todd Stashwick, and Gary Whitta handling the writing, and Bear McCreary and Gary Skyman on the soundtrack. Unfortunately, it hit a couple of rough patches in development, including delays and problems prior to launch, with Gary Whitta himself mentioning that Forspoken's story underwent heavy edits and revisions throughout development, ultimately looking nothing like the original pitch. This shone through even in the pre-release demo, with players citing a lifeless and uninspired world with cringy dialogue. Critical reviews were mixed, with many praising the combat and traversal abilities, but major technical and performance issues negatively impacted the overall experience. A few months after release, Square Enix announced that the game had failed to hit sales expectations, and that Luminous Productions would be absorbed back into the company to essentially become a support studio to further bolster the competitive prowess of the group's development studios. Next up at number 4, The Walking Dead: Destinies. The Walking Dead: Destinies leverages a popular and massive IP with the promise of a thrilling experience, allowing players to rewrite the series' history by changing characters' fates and influencing decisions. This third-person action game features iconic figures like Rick Grimes and Daryl Dixon, retelling crucial moments from the early seasons of the popular AMC show. However, the combat is clunky, with boss battles typically involving bullet sponge-style enemies, while the character animations are clunky and stiff. Cutscenes feature static characters positioned in each screenshot as if they were action figures set up by a 5-year-old, and graphics comparative to a PS2 game, which many players believe has done more to tarnish than aid the brand. At the halfway point with number 3, we have Skull Island: Rise of Kong. Whilst having previously spoken positively about Peter Jackson's King Kong the Game on this channel and the IP, I can't say the same for this title. The game was officially announced on July 20th of this year after being leaked a day earlier, with the full title officially releasing on October 17th. Skull Island aims to combine brawler combat with exploration gameplay as influenced by Joe DeVito, the writer and illustrator of the novel Kong, King of Skull Island. The game's premise followed Kong as he travels across the titular island, fighting enemies including wildlife and several named bosses in dedicated arenas. However, it was marred with poor reviews from both critics and fans alike, noting an extensive number of bugs, terrible graphics, and ultimately boring gameplay. And although the game launched with very little hype and marketing, it drew a lot of buzz from the now iconic cutscene of Kong seeming to recall a past encounter with a monster, masterfully told through an image flashing on screen as if to terrify the user before he goes off into a fit of rage. Following the poor reception of the game, a report by The Verge revealed that the game's publisher Game Mill gave developer Iguana Bee 1 year to build the game from scratch, beginning in June of 2022. Unnamed sources allege that between 2 and 20 developers were working on the game at any given time, and the team were required to crunch in order to finish the project. The report also stated that Game Mill gave Iguana Bee very few details about the game, forcing the latter to improvise. So whilst an unfortunate outcome for the IP, you have to feel for the team behind it. Rounding in at the number 2 spot, we have Redfall. Coming from a developer Arcane Studios who to date has had a pretty good track record, with big name titles and Game of the Year nominees in Deathloop, Dishonored, and Prey, it seemed as though Redfall was going to be another quick win for the studio, although they ultimately dropped the ball big time. After experiencing multiple delays, Redfall launched with a myriad of bugs bogging down the overall experience, including inconsistent AI behavior, shallow gameplay mechanics, and a limited pool of weapons to pick from. Along with a lack of 60 FPS at launch, players also took issue with the looter-shooter elements, character abilities, and RPG mechanics not being very engaging or rewarding to use. All this led up to extremely poor reviews from both critics and fans alike, with Phil Spencer himself opening up about Redfall's poor reception and how disappointing things were in general.
There's nothing that's more difficult for me than disappointing the Xbox community. I think back to the announcement of 60 frames per second, and then we weren't shipping 60 frames per second. That was kind of our punch in the chin, rightfully, a couple weeks ago. And then seeing the game come out and the critical response was not what we wanted.
And although the player count has continued to dwindle over the months since launch, Arcane has continued to release updates and try to improve the game to hopefully win back some fans. But it has to be said, things are bad when the CEO has to step in and say something. Before we get to the number 1 spot, we have some dishonorable mentions, including The Day Before, and Mortal Kombat 1
Psych!
for the Nintendo Switch. And coming in at number 1 for the worst game of 2023, we have The Lord of the Rings, Gollum. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings franchise has experienced plenty of success through movie adaptations, video games, and now an Amazon Prime series. Sadly, Gollum won't go down as one of them. As it currently stands, the game has a 38% approval rating on Metacritic, with users touting that it will go down as the biggest waste of a licensed IP in gaming history. In some ways, the game was set up for failure from the get-go. The game's developer Daedalic Entertainment had previously worked on smaller point-and-click adventure games, and had to follow up the success of the Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and Middle-earth Shadow of War, two massive games set in the same universe that had both received widespread acclaim for both gameplay and world utilization. This wasn't helped by the fact that it had technical and gameplay related issues as well, ranging from frame rate drops and character breaking animations, right through to poor visual graphics and poorly implemented mechanics. In addition to the poorly received game, upsetting details eventually surfaced regarding the toxic work environment, unpaid overtime for its employees, and mismanagement from leadership, eventually leading to Daedalic Entertainment shutting down its development department entirely, now focusing on publishing as it moves forward. Naturally, Lord of the Rings Gollum quickly went on to become one of the worst games of 2023, and the number 1 on this list. Do you agree with this list? Let me know if you played any and what your thoughts are down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video though, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe as it really does help the channel grow. And until next time, I'll see you later. Tap the bell icon after subscribing and you'll never miss a video again. And consider checking out my Facebook page as well for daily gaming updates and news. Thanks guys. A large number of video games are banned in mainland China due to a number of reasons. Because of the large size of the Chinese video game market, many studios edit the content of their games to conform with the government standards. But what ones have been banned outright?